Please stop. I can't go any further.
Stop.
Somebody take
From soiling himself in Dr. Now's office, to standing on a scale that couldn't even register his weight, to becoming what many believe was the heaviest living man on Earth. This is the heartbreaking, unbelievable story of Shawn Milliken, the fattest patient ever to appear on My 600-Pound Life. Bedbound for nearly a decade, trapped inside a collapsing body, and slowly fed toward 1,000 pounds by the one person who loved him the most, his mother.
You really are not helping him, okay? We haven't seen him in months, okay?
Right.
He's not following his diet.
Okay.
He should have lost more weight.
Yes, I agree.
All right, what do you mean
agree.
you agree? You're killing him and you're blaming other people not taking care of him.
But this isn't just a weight loss story. This is a story about dependency, trauma, addiction, and a bond so twisted, it almost killed them both. And today, we are breaking down all 3 of Shawn's My 600-Pound Life episodes. From his rise, to his collapse, to the shocking ending no one was prepared for. The person keeping you alive is also the one slowly killing you. The mother who loved him to death. If you really want to understand how Shawn Milliken reached nearly 1,000 pounds, you have to look at the person standing right beside him. His mother, Renee. To the outside world, she appeared gentle, patient, and endlessly devoted. The image of a mother sacrificing everything for her sick, bedridden son. People saw a caretaker who had given up her own life to keep Shawn alive. But inside that small apartment, behind closed doors, a very different reality was unfolding. Renee wasn't just helping Shawn through his struggles, she was feeding him. Feeding his pain, feeding his addiction, feeding the very habit that was slowly killing him. Every meal she brought him was enormous, piled high with fast food, sugary drinks, and calorie-heavy comfort foods. When Shawn couldn't get up, couldn't move on his own, or couldn't breathe without help, Renee was always there, ready to bring more. Not because she was cruel, but because she was terrified of losing him. Somewhere along the line, caring had quietly transformed into controlling. When a person becomes completely dependent, the dynamic of a relationship shifts. Shawn needed Renee for everything: mobility, hygiene, food, emotional support. And Renee became the center of his world. Food turned into comfort. Comfort turned into love. And love turned into a trap neither of them could break. Shawn's addiction didn't just live in his body, it lived in the unhealthy cycle they shared. Even Dr. Now would later observe, Shawn's problem isn't just Shawn, it's the environment holding him there. The most heartbreaking part is that Shawn knew this. He knew the food was killing him. He knew the constant feeding was dragging him further down. And he knew his health was slipping away. But he also believed that Renee was the only person he had left. She was the one who stayed when life fell apart, the one who didn't abandon him, the one who remained at his side even as his world shrank to the size of his bedroom. That's the dark truth in cases like Shawn's. Sometimes the person trying to save you can also be the one destroying you, not out of malice, but out of fear, trauma, and a desperate need to feel needed. And this twisted pattern between them didn't begin when Shawn became immobile. It didn't begin at 600 pounds or 800 pounds or even 900. It began years earlier, long before the weight, long before the cameras, long before Shawn's body trapped him in bed. It began with pain, with chaos, with emotional wounds that shaped every decision he made as an adult. To understand how Shawn's life spiraled so fast and so brutally, we have to go back to where it all started, to a childhood that set the stage for everything that followed. He wasn't always broken. He wasn't always a 1,000-pound man. Something, or someone, shaped him long before that. And that takes us to his childhood. Growing up broken. Shawn Milliken didn't start life as a man weighed down by 1,000 pounds. He started as a boy who never felt safe in his own home. Long before the cameras, the bed, and the pain, there was a childhood shaped by fear. His father was the kind of man whose presence filled the whole house with tension. Volatile, unpredictable, quick to anger, and slow to understand. For Shawn, every day felt like walking through a minefield, never knowing when the next explosion would come. And when you live in fear, you look for escape, wherever you can find it. For Shawn, that escape was food. Food didn't yell. Food didn't threaten. Food didn't slam doors or make him feel small. It was the one thing in his chaotic world that soothed him instantly, quietly, reliably. With his mother already struggling emotionally, food became the family's universal answer. If Shawn was sad, feed him. If Shawn was scared, feed him. If Shawn was stressed, feed him. It was comfort. It was love. It was the only medicine anyone in the house knew how to give. While other kids ran outside after school, Shawn stayed indoors, eating to fill the silence, the anxiety, the loneliness. The pounds didn't stack up overnight. They built slowly, meal after meal, year after year, like armor he didn't know he was creating. By the time he reached adulthood, eating was no longer something he did. It was something he depended on. A reflex wired deep into him. A survival mechanism formed long before he had the words to explain why he needed it. But trauma doesn't stay small. It grows with you. As Shawn grew heavier, his world grew smaller. The childhood fear turned into adult shame. The coping mechanism turned into an addiction. And the fragile family dynamic that shaped him eventually trapped him. Shawn wasn't just a man losing control of his weight. He was a man who had never been taught how to cope with life without using food to numb the pain. By his late 20s, the spiral was unstoppable. His body is failing. His mobility is disappearing. And his dependence on his mother is deepening. And the emotional wounds of childhood are still bleeding under the surface. Shawn didn't wake up one day and become bedbound. He had been sinking for decades. And that slow, lifelong sinking finally turned into a free fall the day he tried to stand and couldn't. The day Shawn became bedbound. Shawn remembers the exact moment his life crossed the line. Not a slow drifting, but a sudden collapse. A moment that split his life in two, before the bed and after the bed. It happened on an ordinary morning. He tried to stand up, gripping the edge of his dresser, breathing hard, legs trembling under the weight they were never meant to carry. He pushed with everything he had, and then his knees buckled. He fell straight back onto the mattress behind him. Not gracefully, not gently, but like a tree crashing to the ground. The sound of the bed frame cracking under him still echoes in his memory. From that moment on, he couldn't get up again. What was supposed to be a temporary rest became permanent confinement. 1 hour became 1 week. 1 week became 1 year. 1 year became almost a decade. His muscles deteriorated first, shrinking from lack of movement. Then came the swelling, the skin breakdown, the infections, the constant pain that felt like fire inside his joints. Every day, the bed took a little more of him, his mobility, his privacy, his dignity. Shawn didn't just lose the ability to walk, he lost the ability to control his own life. His world shrank to the size of a mattress. His routine narrowed to eating, sleeping, hurting, and hoping the next day wouldn't be worse than the last. And worst of all, he could feel his mother breaking under the weight of it too. Every task went through her hands, bathing him, feeding him, repositioning him, cleaning him. And with every year, she became less a parent and more a caretaker trapped in the same prison. The house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a sick room, a place where time stood still and nothing changed except the numbers on the scale. And those numbers were rising fast. When Shawn finally realized he was running out of time, he made one last desperate choice. The choice that led him straight to Dr. Now. Shawn had lived most of his adult life trapped in his own body. But it wasn't until the hospital that reality hit him like a freight train. The machines, the monitors, the sterile smell of disinfectant. It was a world so different from the comfort of his bedroom that it left him almost speechless. Doctors didn't sugarcoat it. They told him in blunt, unflinching terms what years of unchecked weight gain had done to his body. High blood pressure, heart strain, sleep apnea, joint failure. A list that reads like a death sentence. For Shawn, these weren't just medical terms. They were the consequences of decades of survival mechanisms gone unchecked. And then there was the wake-up call he couldn't ignore. He might not make it if something didn't change, and fast. The gravity of that reality settled on him like a weight heavier than any he had ever carried. For the first time in his life, survival wasn't an abstract idea. It was urgent. But survival wasn't simple. Shawn's body, long accustomed to comfort food and minimal movement, resisted every attempt at change. Each step, each bite, each decision was a battle. And every small victory felt like a mountain climbed, while every setback reminded him of the life he had lost to habit and trauma. The hospital wasn't just a place to treat the body. It became a place to confront a lifetime of pain, fear, and neglect. Therapists, nutritionists, and doctors all tried to guide him, but Shawn knew the real fight was internal. The man who had hidden behind food for decades now had to face himself, raw, unshielded, and vulnerable. Shawn's hospital stay was more than treatment. It was an awakening, a forced confrontation with everything he had avoided: fear, shame, and responsibility for his own life. And as the machines beeped and the nurses came and went, one truth became undeniable. Change wasn't optional anymore. It was survival. But even with this wake-up call, the path ahead was anything but straightforward. Every step forward would come with pain, resistance, and the haunting question: could he reclaim his life? Or was it too late? The grind begins. Shawn left the hospital with a plan, but no illusions. This wasn't a movie montage where progress came instantly. Every morning felt like a negotiation with his own body. Muscles that had forgotten movement, cravings that screamed louder than reason, and a mind that wanted the old comfort more than the new life. The first steps were the hardest. Walking up a single flight of stairs left him breathless. Simple tasks like trying to tie his shoes or bending to pick something up became reminders of how much time he had lost to inactivity. And yet each small achievement lit a spark of hope. Fragile, but persistent. Nutrition became a battlefield. Foods he had leaned on for decades now became tools for survival rather than escape. Measuring portions, resisting sugar-heavy temptations, and learning what his body genuinely needed was a lesson in discipline, frustration, and patience. Every meal became a choice, a test of willpower he had rarely faced. Then came the workouts. He started slow, almost embarrassingly so, but consistency mattered more than intensity. Lifting light weights, walking loops around the park, stretching muscles that had forgotten their strength. Every movement was a rebellion against years of stagnation. Pain became a language he learned to speak, a reminder that growth demanded discomfort. Support from friends, family, and trainers helped, but ultimately, the battle was in his own mind. Every time doubt crept in, Shawn reminded himself why he started. Survival, dignity, a future he almost abandoned. As days became weeks, a subtle shift began. Not just in his body, but in his mindset. He learned to celebrate the small wins, the first mile without stopping, the first healthy meal that genuinely satisfied, the first night of deep sleep in years. Progress felt good, almost intoxicating. But the real challenge wasn't building new habits. It was resisting the old ones. The war with old habits. Every corner of Shawn's life held memories of comfort food, long nights of binge watching, and excuses that had once trapped him. His past seemed to have a gravitational pull, tugging at him when he least expected it. One evening after a long workout, he found himself staring at the vending machine in his building. Sugar, salt, instant gratification, all calling louder than his tired muscles could resist. For a moment, every rule he had built felt fragile, teetering on the edge of collapse. It was a test not of calories or steps, but of pure mental strength. Shawn forged new armor. He swapped triggers for routines. A walk instead of a snack. Music instead of numbness. Accountability instead of isolation. Every deliberate choice was a tiny victory over the inertia that once dominated him. But temptation was cunning. A party with pizza, a stressful day at work, a lonely night. Each situation became a battleground. And he discovered something profound. It wasn't about perfection. It was about persistence. About getting back up. About refusing to let one misstep define him. Slowly, the changes became undeniable. Cravings softened. Energy rose. Victories stacked into momentum. A force he never believed he could command. The lesson was clear. This fight wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional, generational. It was about mastering his mind and rewriting his story one choice at a time. Months of discipline and struggle led to breakthroughs he never expected. It wasn't just pounds lost or muscles gained. It was confidence, clarity, and control. Tasks that once felt impossible grew manageable, even enjoyable. The body followed the mind, proving change was not just possible, but within reach. The real breakthrough, though, wasn't physical. It was emotional. Shawn stopped fearing setbacks because he finally understood progress isn't linear. He embraced resilience and self-compassion, knowing every slip was part of the journey, not the end of it. Friends and family noticed the difference, not only in his appearance, but in his presence. He was more alive, more focused, more grounded. The journey that began as a desperate fight against the scale transformed into one of self-mastery. And here's the truth that will shock most people. Anyone can do this. The path is messy, painful, tempting, but wildly rewarding. The real question isn't, can you change? If Shawn's journey inspired you, smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that prove nothing is impossible. Remember, transformation starts with one choice, one moment, and one decision to fight for yourself. Are you ready to start your own journey today? Let us know below.